Finally time for the main event of UFC Charlotte. Thanks so much for joining in with Fight Night Picks. As always, one half your host, Craig Allen. Twitter, Instagram, at Craig Allen, FNP. A lot more going on Twitter than there is Instagram. With me, as always, Matt Allen, respective socials. Matt Allen, FNP. And when we talk about a clash of styles, I mean, you have a kickboxing ace in Jairzinho Rozenstruik taking on a jiu-jitsu master in Jailton Almeida. And I should say, Jailton Almeida, you watch this guy just grapple in general. He talked about himself outside of the UFC as a Brazilian Khabib. The guy looks like Edge at WrestleMania 17, spearing Jeff Hardy off the Money in the Bank when they were on the ladder.
That was a TLC match. That wasn't Money in the Bank.
There was a ladder. There was a belt. It was crazy. But when you look at this match between Almeida and between Jairzinho Rozenstruik, you talk clash of styles. People are going to fret over Almeida's last fight. And his last time out, 45-1, the significant strike numbers. He went for a kick that was caught by Shamil Durkimov, and he ate a giant right hand for his troubles. And then after that, took to the mat. It looked amazing in the fight. And for Jailton Almeida, he's faced barely any resistance under the UFC banner because he fought on Dana White's Contender Series against Sambo champ Nasruddinov, took him down with ease. Then he went in against Danilo Marquez at light heavyweight, got the win there. Then he was supposed to take on light heavyweight Max Grecian. The fight was scrapped. He gets the biggest heavyweight in Parker Porter. Now, it's not modern day, 249-pound, just great shape Parker Porter. That was big.
Athlete.
That was Big Parker. And Big Parker couldn't handle the takedown. So from there, a catchweight fight against Andrade, and then we're off to the races. And I know Jailton Almeida is a guy that kind of, even before he came into the UFC, not just known as the Brazilian Khabib, but a guy that wanted to conquer heavyweight and light heavyweight. The deck's just kind of fallen to where it's been at heavyweight for Jailton Almeida. That's where he's ranked right now. That's where his bread's gotten buttered. But when you look at a guy like Almeida, who had welterweight experience in his pro career, had wins over two UFC vets before he came on to Dana White's Contender Series, Almeida's one of those guys that hasn't really faced a ton of resistance in many of these fights. And right now, his significant strike total is 112 landed against his opponents in those 5 fights, Contender Series and UFC, to 9 received.
And that's the weird thing about this fight against Rozenstruik, because Rozenstruik has a lot of high-level UFC experience, right? He has fought a lot of very good fighters in the heavyweight division, even though he's only 13-4, so you wouldn't look at that and think, oh, he's fought the who's who in this division. But that's the weird thing about Rozenstruik, and that's something I talked about a lot with Cyril Gahn when he had made his way to the title, right? I don't believe in you until you've faced adversity, and we saw a little bit of that in Volkov, not the grappling kind, which we've seen as of late, but for Almeida, is he going to face adversity outside of a knockout punch? You know what I mean? Like, how hard is this fight going to be until he gets finished? Because, of course, Rozenstruik has enough power to go out there and head kick him, flying knee him, land a crazy hook. Like, Jairzinho is that level of striker, but we talked about it before we started filming. Jairzinho can win a lot of fights at the UFC level. He doesn't win a ton of rounds at the UFC level, though. He will set things up, and again, I don't think all the inactivity is just kind of wasted him being on the outside, right? I don't think he's judging the distance. I think he's setting some things up with the inside leg kick, but outside of a lot of the big bursts, there isn't a ton of success, and that's why it's always frustrating watching Rozenstruik fight, because remember the Sakai fight? Like, in the Sakai fight, nobody did anything, and then all of a sudden Jairzinho was like, hey, I can throw my hands, I have crippling power, move forward, knocked him out. So for Rozenstruik, all the tools are kind of locked inside the tool shed. It's just, where is the key right now? Because if he's not fighting at the fullest of capacities, and I even look back at the Curtis Blades loss, and you might look at that and say, hey, it was a loss, he got out-controlled a lot in that fight. Ewan did do a really good job, though, defending takedowns against one of the better takedown artists in the division. So if we see that level of takedown defense, and we kind of see the rally ability from the Overeem fight, I don't doubt he could go out there and get a win.
In the UFC, Jairzinho Rozenstruik boasts 75% takedown defense. Overeem went 2 of 10 on attempts. Overeem was winning all 4 and then the 5th round until he got finished in the dying seconds. Blades went 3 of 6, and then you had Cyril Gahn, who went 2 of 14, but he was able to get it done on the feet, even though there wasn't a ton of action. And Rozenstruik has the main event experience, the 5-round experience over a guy like Almeida. Almeida has one 5-round fight, and it was his Thunder Fight Championship winning contest against Ednaldo de Oliveira, where he's able to get that belt in the first round, and then he went over to Contender Series and beat Nasruddinov his next time out. So when you look at a guy like Jailton Almeida, his 2 losses on his record, he lost to karate practitioner Bruno Assis, who ended up having an LFA a middleweight title fight against one Ozzy Diaz, you might recognize from Contender Series as well. He fought Joe Pyfer. And then Almeida has a 16-second knockout loss to Thiago Moreira. So an interesting one there for Almeida. And that fight was quite some time ago.
Yeah.
Thiago Moreira back in 2017. So 2017 loss and a 2018 loss. Almeida has won 13 straight. So he's looked unbeatable, but he has eaten some shots in certain fights if you go down through it. And we were kind of negative on Almeida coming into the UFC because if you watch him fight pre-UFC, there were stance switches that didn't really make a lot of sense, and there was a lot of big actions. And you still see that out of Almeida in the UFC, which are scary when he takes on a guy like Rozenstruik. Look at Almeida's fight against Anton Turkalj. What does he do to close distance? Does he run all the way across the cage like an edge spear like I talked about? No. He goes flying knee, jump to close the distance, land, takedown. And when you look at it against a guy like Rozenstruik, if you do something like that, you're going to get caught in the middle and hit. You look at a guy like Rozenstruik, I talk about his kickboxing lineage, 76 wins in 85 kickboxing fights, 64 of them by knockout. Jairzinho Rozenstruik had a similar rise to Jailton Almeida when Rozenstruik came into the UFC. He was dusting guys with his hands. Almeida's dusting guys where...
Faced more adversity, though.
Yeah, Almeida gets you, takes you down, and then he either softens you up with ground and pound, he locks the legs, like you see a lot of really high-level fighters do, forces you to spin around, and then he either finishes you with ground and pound or sinks in a rear naked choke. So Almeida is that accredited with his jiu-jitsu. If you go and look over on his Instagram, he's been training with one Gutenberg Pereira, one of the top IBJJF champs that are out there right now. So that's good to see. They had a seminar at Galpao de Luta. But when you look at a matchup like this, again, when it is such a clash of styles, it can be a little bit tough.
Yeah.
Because Almeida, for as good as he is on the ground, even though he just got hit by one strike by Abdurakhimov, if you go back and watch those fights pre-UFC, he is defensively liable in a lot of them with striking.
He is, but on the flip side, we've seen Rozenstruik get taken down by Alistair Overeem, who is a really good grappler, but not like a pure wrestler, and Junior Albini in his UFC debut. I know you might look at the result and kind of forget about how we got there. Albini took him down. Albini controlled him and outworked him a lot in that opening round. So I do think there is something to be said for Rozenstruik does have good takedown defense, but after he does get taken down, he doesn't have a lot to offer up off his back.
Well, we'll see how it works out that way. If you do look at it, Almeida opened minus 310. He's a minus 550 favorite. Rozenstruik opened plus 260. He's a plus 400. You know about the main events. We throw it on over to you in the YouTube community tab. You guys do a great job of filling things out, adding the comments, and voting on these polls. 81% right now going with Jailton Almeida to get the win. Out of the comments, Henke saying Jailton's been getting clipped hard early in his fights before he eventually started to dominate. I think that's more off the last one. Let's see if he can take one from Biggie Boy, picking Almeida, but early Jairzinho knockout wouldn't surprise me. And Alia David saying, if Rozenstruik is fighting a technical, more powerful boxer, he loses. P.S. Just watch some highlights on Almeida. He's a beast. I'm a little confused by that one. But when it does come down to this matchup, Matt, I mean, majority fans have Almeida to win. He's a beefed up favorite in the matchup. I like him to win, but Rozenstruik has good defensive philosophy, I guess. On the first Blades takedown attempt, it was a double leg. Rozenstruik went to just pick him right up and land double unders. And when he went to pick him up, Blades just kind of reset, dropped down, and he got the takedown out of it. And I know Blades eventually 3-6, so Rozenstruik was able to get back up to his feet at a certain point. I like the takedowns of a guy like Almeida at the top pressure. I know he's a much smaller man in a fight like this, but when I look at him, for Rozenstruik, in the fights where he's having a ton of success, he either goes crazy really early on and just starts to land. Like Chris Daukaus landed one right hand, and then Rozenstruik, it awakened the beast, and he went out there and was able to land those great right hands. Wobble Daukaus once, drop Daukaus, and it was over. When you look at a guy like Rozenstruik, once he starts to just flip that switch, he looks amazing. And Almeida, with the stance switches and defensive liabilities on the outside, Rozenstruik could capitalize, but I do like Almeida in the fight.
I just think for Jairzinho, he could defend 8 takedown attempts. If he gives up 1, I could see him getting finished. I really do think Almeida has that big of an advantage from a top position standpoint because he does have phenomenal ground and pound, and it does open up a lot of submissions. And again, Rozenstruik has good takedown defense. I'm not saying he doesn't at all. It's the defensive grappling once he does get into more of those elongated situations. He's not great at getting back up to his feet. He doesn't have a lot of submissions off his back. And again, Almeida, he might not be a one. You know what? He is kind of a one of one in the heavyweight division. There's no one who really fights like him. He is undersized, so we'll be interested to see if that lack of physicality will come back to bite him. But for being a guy who's only 230, he looks so physically strong in there that I really do think it's going to give him the edge in the matchup, and that's why I have Almeida.
Both of us going with Jailton Almeida in a big-time action-packed main event. A big card coming at you from Charlotte. There's only one hometown guy coming up this weekend. That's Bryan Battle, who's taking on gifted Gabe Green. Couple possible fight of the nights. The Dirty Bird taking on Alex Morono. You also have Matt Brown and Court McGee 2 hours before the prelims. Because if you remember, it's an ABC card, so it's early. So Question Mark Kicks is early on Saturday. Make sure you set your clocks to that one. We'll have the link out there more than likely on Friday, so you can subscribe. You know when we go live. If you toss a like, it is very much appreciated. Coming off a big weekend of UFC 288, we heard the Boo Birds with the Bilal Muhammad pick. He was able to win out there. A big in still for Aljamain Sterling in the main event. A great card there. This is one of the bigger fight nights that we've had so far this year, too.
Great
so
fight night card.
one to really look forward to. You are going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night picks, we always say. Let's get into it.